So here's what I'm making. I'm making a blonde with dark roots, kind of the Guy Fieri spin on a blondie. Now I've creamed the brown sugar and about 1/3 of a cup of butter in there. Just add in a touch of some vanilla and slow this down a second so I don't wear all the flour. A cup of flour. There we go. Okay, let that kind of mix up. Pantry. Some leavening agent, a little baking powder, some baking soda. A couple of the key ingredients go into this, some coconut chocolate chips, and I always keep them in the freezer. Keep them nice and fresh. Got some hazelnuts. And because I'll tell you something, Master Baker Jeff always told me, you gotta use your measuring spoon when it comes to putting in your baking powder and your baking soda. Okay, that's looking good. Let me get these in here. So it's a 1/2 teaspoon of each one of these. That's a quarter. And this is really important because this is what is gonna give this, keep it from being so dense. And a quarter. Let that all mix up. All right, get it out of my way. There we go. It's got some cream cheese that's out. Let that come to room temperature. I'm gonna be incorporating about 3 ounces of that. Before I do anything else, let me get about a 1/2 cup. Chase these hazelnuts all over this cutting board. Watch this, okay? But I wanna I'm gonna put a little chop on them so I just don't have huge hazelnut pieces throughout this blondie. There we go. Bring it off. I'm gonna go in with the hazelnuts. About a 1/2 cup of those. About a 1/2 cup of the chocolate chips. I'm gonna fold these in by hand. I don't have to measure this part, right? This is the filling? Yeah, 1/2 cup of those. And about a 1/4 cup of this coconut. Coconut goes a long way, but because it really has a distinct flavor. But all these are gonna go in so well. So about a 1/4 cup of the coconut, and then the room temperature cream cheese, which will really be nice, swirled inside of this. We'll get about, that looks like a 1/3, okay? I'm gonna grab some of this butter. Grease the edge of this baking dish. Got my oven preheated at 350, and this is gonna take like 15 to 20 minutes. Actually, it could be 18 to 20 minutes. But I'll not just rely on the time. I'll go ahead and make sure that I've got a toothpick on hand in case, and I can do the little toothpick test there and see if it comes out clean, okay? So that was all folded in. Spread it around. Huh? Look at those. See that action? See the smooth moves? This is gonna be dynamite. This is some road trip food. Okay. That there. Pop this into the oven. We're gonna go right here. Time to see if the blondie is ready. This is actually my version of the blondie, the blonde with dark roots. See if it comes clean. We're in it to win it. Okay, so we'll bring this, ow, that's hot, right over here and let it cool down before we cut into it. Blonde with dark roots is my twist on a blondie brownie packed with chopped hazelnuts, shredded coconut, chunks of chocolate, and swirls of rich cream cheese. Now these are some bodacious brownies.
My red velvet swirl brownies transform the classic Southern cake into fudgy brownies. I'm gonna get started working on the batter. Now, this is gonna be kind of a twofold batter, the red velvet on the bottom, and then we're gonna have some cream cheese and a little bit more red velvet and do our swirl. It's gonna be really, really pretty. This is maybe something that you could do with your kids too, because I gotta tell you, I started baking at an early age. I mean, they were mud pies, but I was baking. I knew the concept of it. All right, 2 eggs in. I'm just gonna whisk these up really quick and get them ready to go. All right, now to my eggs, I'm gonna add in some of the stuff that really makes this a red velvet brownie. Of course, a little flavor from vanilla. Get that in there. And then my red food coloring, have to have this. Squeeze out a lot. And then some vinegar. Now the vinegar is gonna start reacting with my next ingredient to really make this red pop. It's gonna be a nice bright red color. And this is my cocoa powder, what's gonna make it pop. Now, this is a chocolate brownie, all right? But it's not like heavy chocolate flavor, but do need the cocoa powder, just kind of bring it all around. There we go. And then to this, I'm gonna add a cup of sugar. Add that in there. See how easy this is? You can have the kids do all the measuring out for you. And then a nice pinch of salt. Now I need some flour. So I'm gonna get that really quick. And while you weren't looking, I had some walnuts. I toasted up, chopped them really quick. I'm gonna get these in. You can do pecans, any kind of nuts that your kids like, and if they have the allergy, just leave it out. All right, now I'm gonna get in about 3/4 of a cup of my flour in. About 3/4 of a cup. One. You know, let me tell you about red velvet and me. It is my favorite cake. And I recently visited my grandma, and it was a surprise visit. So the weird thing is I really couldn't get my red velvet cake. She didn't know I was coming. I'm trying to figure out how can I make a surprise visit to my grandma and get red velvet cake. Me and my cousin Monique, we're gonna work it out next time. All right, so just slowly add in the butter. You don't want it to kind of upset the eggs or anything like that. 1 full stick. Ooh, don't get on me. Need that butter in the bowl. Just gonna go ahead and work this around really well. Look at how bright this red is. I'm telling you, it's the vinegar, the cocoa powder, you know, the acid levels, everything that's going on in these ingredients really work out well. It's like, did they know when they were making cocoa powder that it was supposed to be for red velvet? All right, so I'm gonna get this into my pan over here. This is an 8x8 pan. I've got it buttered. I'm not gonna get all of my batter in, maybe 90% of it, and the other I'm going to leave to dollop right over the top. Just some cream cheese. I have softened at room temperature here, 8 ounces of it. A little bit of vanilla goes in for flavor. I'm gonna put 1/4 cup of sugar in as well. And then just 1 egg, and this is gonna go right over my red velvet layer, which is just some cocoa powder, a little bit of vinegar, some sugar, flour, and red food coloring, of course, with a pinch of salt. All right, let me get this down and get this going. I love cream cheese as well, so this just, to me, it's heaven, you know? Heaven in a square, a big square. If you don't know me, you should know by now I can do this entire 8x8. I would rather a 13x9, but trying to keep it light. All right, so now after everything is completely mixed together, turn it up a bit. You're gonna have a couple of little lumps, but that won't be too bad. It's gonna melt away when we get this into the oven. I'm gonna get this out and get ready to smooth this on the top of my red velvet brownies. Let me tell you, I came up with this idea because I love cheesecake and I love red velvet, so I thought, why not put the two together? I'm just gonna get this right over the top and try and kind of pour it evenly so when you spread, you don't kind of have to pull from one area and mess up with the red coming through. Let's get this all out into my 8x8 here. This is gonna be really easy. Now, if you are cooking with your kids, the next part of this is just truly, to me, fantastic. Get this on, a nice little smear, which makes sense. This is cream cheese. And then right on top of this, remember I saved about 10% of the batter, just maybe 1/4 cup, not even that. I'm gonna dollop it around, and that is going to be what I use to kind of get my swirl on. Okay, so a little piece there, a little piece there. This is what the kids will love, because I love it, and I still think I'm a kid. That's the cool thing about going to like family reunions. You know, I'm not married, you know, I don't have any kids, so I don't sit at like the adult table and I end up playing video games with all my cousins and stuff like that while all the parents are asleep. All right, here it goes. This is where the kids come in. They're gonna love this. Just take a skewer or the sharp end of a knife and just start to work this around. Whatever you do, it's gonna turn out beautiful because it's gonna have personality. Just like to go in circles, figure eights, whatever you like. Now I've got my oven at 350 degrees. This is gonna go into the oven for about 30 minutes. You know the trick, give it a nice little prick right in the center. If it comes out clean, it's good to go. All right, this is my red velvet swirl brownie. In the oven, 350, about 30 minutes. And on the bottom, don't forget the toasted walnuts that I put in there. Man, oh man. Get myself a nice little corner slice, the red food coloring, the cocoa. This ain't a game. This is some good stuff. You gotta give this a try.
I'm making hidden secret brownies. I'm usually pretty good at keeping secrets, but I'm gonna let you in on this one. I'm adding beets to my regular brownie recipe. You won't believe how delicious the results are. Turn on the mixer and let that start to cream together. And while it does, I'm gonna puree the beets. I've got 8 ounces of boiled beets and I'm gonna put them in the food processor. So I'll give it a few pulses and then I'll take the lid off and scrape the sides and then I'll puree it again. Now I hear what some of you are saying, gross, beets in brownies, no way. But I tell you what, you have got to try it. You'll be hooked for life, I promise. Okay, I'll let those sit for a minute. And I'm gonna turn the mixer to the lowest speed and I'll add 3 eggs. I already cracked them. I don't want the shell in the brownie batter. Those are in. And now just a splash of vanilla. I'm gonna drizzle in some melted unsweetened chocolate. This recipe is based on my triple chocolate brownies, but what I did was remove one of the chocolates and I'm substituting the beets instead. Okay, that is looking good. So now I'm gonna mix in the beets. When you try these brownies, you'll see you do not taste the beets at all. Now I've also gotta add some dry ingredients. 1 1/4 cup of flour, and then 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa. That's the second chocolate in the brownie. And I'll mix that together. It smells really good in this kitchen. So I'll add about 1/3 of this mixture into the mixer. And again, the lowest setting. I don't want everything to fly everywhere. I'm gonna crank up the mixer a bit. Just one more thing to add, some chopped walnuts, or you can use pecans, whatever you like in brownies. And that looks absolutely perfect. I am definitely going to lick this later. I will wait until I've got the brownies done. I'm gonna give the bowl a scrape just to make sure I didn't miss any chunks of flour anywhere. Now I've got a square baking pan. I greased the pan and then I lined it with parchment and then I greased the parchment itself. I do not want these brownies to stick. I'm gonna spread it into the corners and then it's just a few more steps before you see the results. So first I'll bake the brownies 350 degrees for 50 minutes. Then take them out and let them cool in the pan. I'll lift the brownie slab out, peel off the paper, cut it into 9 big squares, and pile them onto a cake stand. Pizzauni, which is a combination of a pizza and a brownie. It's basically a dessert pizza. I started with a bunch of chocolate hazelnut spread, and I added 3 eggs, and I kind of stirred them together, and I'm gonna sprinkle in flour a little bit at a time. When I first made this brownie recipe, I was very skeptical because I thought there is no way that that chocolate hazelnut spread is going to, combine with eggs and flour and result in what is one of my most favorite desserts, brownies. Okay, the rest of the flour goes in. You gotta trust me on this. Okay, so I got the brownie batter all stirred up, and I've got a round pizza pan, and I put a square of parchment on there and sprayed the parchment really well because you want to be able to get this brownie off of the pan very easily. So you just kind of get it almost to the edge of the pan. The oven's going to kind of let it ooze a little bit out. So let's go bake this, Alex.
Let's do it.
It's going to bake at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes until it's set. And then I'm going to take it out, let it cool, and cover it with toppings. Okay, so the brownie has been baked and cooled, and look at this, how yummy it looks. So before I decorate the top, I'm gonna make a ganache, and that's gonna be like the pizza sauce on the pizza. So it also has chocolate hazelnut spread and chocolate chips. And I'm just gonna make it like I would normally make ganache. I have a saucepan with really hot cream, and it has to be hot, 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 hot cream. So I'm gonna go ahead and start stirring, and if the cream is hot enough, that heat will take you through to the end, and you'll wind up with the glossiest, most gorgeous ganache. Okay, Alex, come in here and look at this.
Oh, baby. That was some glassy ganache.
I love it when she does those little comments. Okay, so I've got the cooled crust, and here goes the sauce. Oh my gosh, that is rude. Rude and beautiful all at the same time. So you want to spread it out kind of to the edge, and now on with the candies. So candy-coated chocolate pieces go first, and then little malted milk balls, which is an old favorite of mine. I used to eat these in the movie theater. Little caramels coated in chocolate. And see, I'm leaving everything big because it's fun that way. And then some little toffee pieces. And we are not even close to being done yet.
Ooh.
So I like to melt a little bit of white almond bark in the microwave and get it kind of to the pourable stage. And then just take a fork and drizzle back and forth. And then just to make sure it's colorful and happy and fun. And because sprinkles just make everything better, I like to go over the top with sprinkles. I mean, make this for your friends, make it for your teenagers, just make it.
I'm making my s'mores brownies, which are rich and fudgy and covered in charred marshmallows. To get started on the crust, I have 2 packages of graham crackers. I'll spice things up with some ground cinnamon, a little bit of chili powder for a tiny kick of heat. I'll bring out all the flavors with a pinch of kosher salt, and then I'll blend this until it's really finely ground. All right, I'm gonna drizzle in 10 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter, and this will bring the crust together. Oh yeah, this looks great and it smells even better. I'm gonna get this into my pan now. I've got an 8-inch square pan that I've greased and lined with parchment paper, and I'll pack it down firmly and evenly. My crust is packed. I'm gonna stick it in the fridge to chill while I make my brownie layer. These brownies are so moist and fudgy. I'll start with 2 large eggs. And I love brownies because they always come together in just one bowl. I'll grab some sugar, half a cup of light brown sugar. I'll add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I'll pour in the melted butter that's left over from the graham cracker crust. And by this time, it's cooled slightly, which is good because I don't want it to cook the eggs. And this is 3 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. I'll whisk this to combine, and I want to whisk it pretty vigorously so that the butter and the sugar really emulsify. Time to add some dry ingredients. I'll get a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of baking powder, half a cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Cinnamon and chocolate together are so good. And then a little bit of chili powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'll mix to combine. And for the final touch, some chocolate chips. Twice the chocolate. My crust is firmed up. I'm gonna pour the brownie batter all over it. I'll spread this out evenly. Now this is ready for the oven. I'll stick it in at 350 degrees until they're set on top. I think these are gonna be the true winners of the games. My brownies are done baking. They're looking great. And now for the top layer, I'm making my gooey marshmallow frosting. I've got 1 stick of butter, 1½ cups of powdered sugar, and a pinch of salt that I'm blending up until it's fluffy. And now to make it marshmallowy, I'm gonna add 2 cups of marshmallow cream. It's so smooth and gooey. I'm just eyeballing this in. I'll add half a teaspoon of vanilla extract and mix until it's smooth. I'll spread this right on. I've gotta have frosting on a brownie. Just feels incomplete without it. And I'll spread this all over. Oh, for sweet. I'll stick this in the fridge to firm up, and then I'm gonna go find Nick because I need some help charring up my marshmallows. If you don't have a torch person, you can toast your marshmallows in a broiler. Those look perfect. It smells like a campfire in here. Now you can just put some of those on top of the brownies.
Will do.
Perfect. Okay, you did a great job. I think you earned a taste.
Let's do it.
Okay. Cheers. Mmm. Look at those layers.
That is really good.
I'm making my mint truffle bars. To get started, I'm gonna infuse some butter with fresh mint. I'll melt 3/4 cup of unsalted butter. While this melts, I'm gonna get my mint ready. I'm gonna chop off the rough stems. Some of the tender stems in here are fine. Now I'm gonna remove it from the heat, and I'm gonna let this infuse for 10 minutes off the heat while I mix up my dry ingredients. I'm gonna combine 1 cup unsweetened cocoa powder, 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. I'll whisk this up. Okay, this is combined. I'll set this aside. I'll strain the butter right into my big bowl. I'm smelling that minty freshness. Then I'm gonna press with my spatula to get any excess butter that's hiding in the mint leaves. I've got a couple of eggs and some bittersweet chocolate, which is gonna be so great underneath the layer of minty sweet buttercream. And I'm gonna add 2 ounces, which is about a good big handful. And I'm gonna let the heat of the butter melt the chocolate. And then I'll whisk it up until it's smooth. Chocolate and butter and mint. Yes. I'm gonna add my 2 eggs. I'll whisk to combine. This is the best place to be right now, just standing over a bowl of minty, buttery chocolate. I'll whisk in the dry ingredients. When all of these layers are in one bite together, it's completely addictive. And now I'm gonna bring this batter together with some mint schnapps. You can't survive a Chicago winter without peppermint schnapps. Chicago is so cold. I realize that this area is even colder, but in Chicago, I was so freezing because you have to walk places there. Here you just drive everywhere. You leave your car running in the grocery store parking lot. Okay, I'm gonna measure out 1/4 cup of schnapps, and this is gonna add more minty flavor on top of that fresh mint. And if you didn't wanna use schnapps, you could sub milk with a little bit of mint extract. I'll pour this in and whisk until it's smooth. I've got an 8-inch squared pan here that's lined with parchment, and I have these little wings, which is gonna help me lift the bars out when they're done. I'll scrape the batter right in, and I'll smooth it out into a thin, even layer. This looks great. I'll stick it in the oven at 350 degrees for 28 to 30 minutes until the center is set. Layer 1 complete. My brownie layer is out of the oven and cooling, and now I'm gonna make my mint buttercream, which is sweet and fresh, and it adds this beautiful pop of green color. To start, I'm gonna mix up some softened unsalted butter with a little powdered sugar for sweetness and a pinch of salt. I'll add some peppermint schnapps. This is for more minty flavor and a little bit of a buzz because unlike the brownies, this is not getting baked. I'll squirt in a touch of green food coloring and beat till it's fully combined. Ah, that's so pretty. It's almost like a dark sage. Okay. This is gonna be a thick layer. Oh yeah, it's so smooth and luxurious. I'm spreading the frosting all the way to the edge. Okay. Oh my God, that's so good and minty. And I'm like a little bit drunk now. I'm gonna let this firm up in the fridge for about 15 minutes while I get going on my third layer. My buttercream has firmed up, and now I'm gonna take the best part of a chocolate truffle, that buttery center, and smear it all over the top. I have my chocolate and butter that's melted in my pan here, and I'm gonna pour it on and make big, luxurious swoops. And I'll finish it off with just a few of these shiny silver sprinkles. It's so pretty. I'm gonna let this set in the fridge, and then I'll cut these into 16 perfect squares. And 2 for me. Oh my God. They are so intensely minty and chocolatey, and the textures just go so well together. For dessert, I am making my Turkish coffee brownies that are rich and fudgy and have the perfect combination of chocolate, cardamom, and coffee. To get started, I'm toasting up some walnuts. These are looking great. They've been in my pan for a few minutes now, and they've gotten lightly browned. And now I'll just coarsely chop them. Now I'll set these aside while I whip up my batter. In my big bowl here, I'll combine my dry ingredients, 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of sugar, and 1/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. And then I'll add 2 teaspoons of instant espresso powder, and then 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt and baking powder. I'm gonna add some cinnamon and cardamom to my brownies. And cardamom just adds a really nice floral woodsy element. Okay, I've got my dry ingredients. I'll whisk this to combine. Okay, my dry ingredients are combined, and now I'm gonna mix up my wet ingredients. I have 2 large eggs here, and I like starting with my eggs first in case there's any shell that gets in them. And then I have 1/2 cup of melted butter here that is cooled slightly. I don't want it to be too hot, otherwise it'll cook my eggs. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is such an easy batter. I'll add my wet ingredients to my dry ingredients and whisk to combine. Okay, and now I'll fold in my walnuts. You can use any nut in these. You could even just skip the nuts. All right, now I'll grab my pan. I've prepared my pan by greasing it and lining it with parchment paper. Greasing it first helps the parchment paper stick, and I also like allowing little wings to come up on the side so that I can use these parchment wings to lift the brownies up out of the pan after they've baked. So I'll just dump my batter right into my pan. This is an 8 by 8 inch. I'll spread out my batter. Okay, now these are gonna bake at 350 for about 25 minutes until the center is set. I'm gonna let these cool now while I make my chocolate coffee glaze. I'll start with 1 cup of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder, a pinch of kosher salt, and then I'm also gonna add some cardamom to the glaze as well. Just a little bit goes a long way. And then I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of melted butter, a tablespoon of coffee, and it could be freshly brewed or cold. You've gotta have coffee in the glaze and the brownies. And 1 tablespoon of honey will make this glaze glossy. And then just a splash of vanilla, and I'll whisk this until it's smooth. Okay, this consistency is perfect. My brownies have cooled and they're ready for the glaze. This is such a nice, thick, glossy glaze. Got this away from me. Now I'll spread this all over the brownies. I think my swoops are looking good. They just need one more thing. I'm now going to bedazzle my brownies with rainbow chips. Once this glaze is set, I'll slice them into perfect squares.
And I'm starting with the recipe that we'll probably wind up eating last, making a big batch of knock you naked brownies. I start with a German chocolate cake mix, and then to that I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of evaporated milk, and then a stick of melted butter. just mix that a little bit, and then I'll chop up a bunch of pecans. A couple years ago, somebody sent me a gift of killer brownies, and they were so good that I actually rationed them. And this is the closest recipe I've found to the killer brownies that I was given. Brownies are perfect for football food because the whole thing about football food is it needs to be easy to grab and eat with your hands. So I couldn't imagine having a layered cake or something fussy. It just needs to be quick and something that the guys can just grab. And I don't know, there's something about giving old college friends a batch of knock-you-naked brownies that kind of cracked me up. But I'm kind of mischievous that way. You'll need about a cup of pretty finely chopped pecans. So I'll add these to the mix and just stir them up. It's a really, really thick batter. You can't pour it at all. You have to really kind of smush it with a rubber spatula to get it combined. So right now, I'm just going to use half of this mixture. So what I do is I just press it into the bottom of the bowl, and then I use my spatula to draw a line right down the middle. And then I know I'm getting exactly half the dough. Math has always been my strong suit. Just stick it in this greased and floured pan, and then the easiest way to do it is just use your fingers to pat it all along the bottom. All right, now it goes in the oven, 350 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes until it's done. Okay, I've got a double boiler going, and I've just unwrapped 60 caramels. I didn't eat one, I promise. I'm gonna add a half a cup of evaporated milk. Now I added a third a cup earlier, so we've almost used the whole can. And then just give it a little stir, and this will take a little while to melt. Okay, oh, the caramel's perfect. Nice and smooth. Now I'm gonna grab the brownies out of the oven. These aren't actually done, they're just set. And you're not gonna believe what I'm about to do to these. Grab the melted caramel sauce, and it just goes in a layer over the first layer of brownies. Okay, now I'll just spread it out into a layer. Now I'm gonna grab some chocolate chips and just sprinkle them on. And you really just need a single layer of chocolate chips. The brownies are gooey enough as it is. And now I'm gonna take the other half of the brownie dough. And when I use the first half, I could just use my fingers and press them into the pan, but I can't do that this time because the pan has all this stuff going on. So I'm gonna press it into a square. This all just turns into a gooey, wonderful masterpiece. Okay, now I'm gonna stick this in the oven for another 20 minutes or so, and then I'll take them out and chill them, and then cut them into pieces and serve them to the guys.
For the dry mixture, I've got a quarter of a cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna sift them together. And here I have the chocolate mixture. It's so good, which I've prepared and completely cooled. I added 1 stick of unsalted butter, that's a quarter of a pound, to a bowl set over a pan of simmering water. Added 4 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips, 1½ ounces of unsweetened chocolate, and melted everything together. Then I set it aside for 15 minutes just to allow it to cool slightly. In a separate bowl, I added 2 extra large eggs, 2 teaspoons of instant coffee granules. It's one of those magic things that really brings out the chocolate flavor. 1½ teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, a half a cup plus 1 tablespoon of sugar. It's an unusual amount, but it gives just the right amount of sweetness. Then I stirred everything together. Just stir it, don't beat it. You don't want extra air in it. The last step is to stir the chocolate mixture into the egg mixture and allow it to cool to room temperature. So that's the 2 mixtures. Now I'm just gonna put the flour into the chocolate mixture. As you can see, there's very little flour in this, which is what makes them such gooey, chocolatey brownies. This looks fantastic. So the last thing is, because these are actually triple chocolate, there are chocolate chips in it as well. So I've got ½ a cup of chocolate chips. This is why you want to make sure the batter is cool, because you don't want these chocolate chips to melt into the batter. You want them to stay whole chocolate chips. I just put a tablespoon of flour into the chocolate chips. What it does is keep them from sinking in the batter. Just toss them together. Okay, and right into the mixture. can't imagine how chocolatey this smells. That little hint of coffee really makes a difference. Okay, time to put it into the skillets. So I've got a tray with skillets on it. These are 3.5-inch cast iron skillets. You can buy them online, and they're just great, individual portions. How fabulous is that? And I'm just gonna pour this right in. Generally, when you have a brownie, you have to wait for it to cool, so you can cut it in squares and then eat it. And when it's in the skillet, I realized you don't have to wait for it to cool. It can be served hot right out of the oven. Okay, want to get every bit. Okay, these are gonna bake 350 degrees for 25 minutes, and they're gonna be so hot and gooey and just delicious. Oh my God, this is just amazing. Molten hot chocolate. Who wouldn't want that for dessert? Well, talk about saving the best for last. Just a girl and her brownie. Wow. When Jeffrey was in college, I used to send him a big shoebox filled with homemade brownies. It's sort of the culinary equivalent of a low-cut dress. I guess it worked. I've been married to him for almost 40 years. So I thought I'd make him brownies, but this time with peanut butter swirl in them. The first thing I need is a pound of butter and a pound of chocolate. It's a lot of butter and chocolate, but it's a lot of brownies. And then a pound of chocolate chips. They're semi-sweet chocolate chips. And then because I don't want them too sweet, I'm gonna put in 6 ounces of bitter chocolate. It's actually unsweetened chocolate. Just gonna chop it up. Try and keep your fingers out of the way. Okay, right into the butter and semi-sweet chocolate. And just melt that until it just melts. You don't want to burn the chocolate. Okay, I'm just going to stir this up. And just over simmering water. If the water boils, it gets too hot and it'll burn the chocolate. So I'm just going to leave that over simmering water while I get the eggs together. I need 6 eggs. I use extra large eggs. It's really important to use room temperature eggs. It just makes the batter work better. This makes 20 huge brownies. Jeffrey's really romantic. A few years ago for our anniversary, he gave me a box of brownies to remind me of the brownies that I used to send him in college. I thought it was so sweet. I wonder if he'll get it about all the things I'm gonna cook for him today. Okay, the chocolate's just melted. I'm gonna turn it off. Actually, I wanna let it cool because I don't want to pour the hot chocolate mixture right into the eggs. Okay, while that cools, I'm gonna add some things to the eggs. And I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of instant coffee powder. It sounds like an odd thing to put in brownies, but it makes the chocolate taste so chocolatey. 2 tablespoons of good vanilla extract. Okay, the next thing is 2 1/4 cups of sugar. An extra quarter. I'm gonna whisk these together, but I'm not gonna whip it. I don't want to get any air in it. I want them to stay pretty dense. All the coffee and vanilla, chocolate. Okay. Next thing I want to do is put the flour and baking powder together. So I need a cup of flour, tablespoon of baking powder, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. I sift these together just to make sure it's really smooth when it goes into the mixture. Okay, so that's the dry ingredients. Now I just want to see if the chocolate's cool enough so that it doesn't scramble the eggs. And since I'm putting chocolate chips in later, I don't want it to melt the chocolate chips. Perfect. Good. Okay, I'm just going to pour it right into the eggs and coffee and vanilla. Oof, this is a big bowl of chocolate. Now the flour and baking powder, just slowly add it in. See, that's not a lot of flour for that amount of batter. These brownies are so good, they're really chocolatey. Okay, that's mixed. So I'm gonna take a quarter cup of flour and mix it with 2 cups of chocolate chips. And what it does is keep the chocolate chips from sinking to the bottom of the batter. Just mix them together. Just put them right in. Sometimes I do these brownies with nuts. Sometimes I do them with salted peanuts are good. Great flavor combination. Okay, buttered and floured a half sheet pan. I'm just gonna pour this right on. Just smooth it out. All right, take 3/4 of a cup of peanut butter. You can use smooth peanut butter or chunky peanut butter, whatever you like, and do big dollops of it right on top. And then I'm gonna swirl it in with a knife. I'll show you how. I think it's really important that it actually, when you bite into a brownie, you can taste the peanut butter. It doesn't just look like peanut butter, but it actually tastes like peanut butter. Okay. Take a knife and just swirl this through. So every bite's gonna have a little bit of peanut butter, a chocolate chip, chocolate, and then all those flavors of coffee and vanilla. Who could resist that? Okay, these are gonna bake 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I developed this very strange technique, but it works. Halfway through the baking, I'm gonna pick up the pan and wrap it on the shelf, and it releases all the air between the brownies and the pan. These are gonna smell great. Brownies smell great. I'm surprised Jeffrey hasn't come in to see what smells so good. So they bake for exactly 30 minutes. You can see the swirl of peanut butter. Yeah. That's gonna be perfect with a steak sandwich. These don't look bad. I don't know, a steak sandwich, brownies for lunch. Jeffrey might think I'm up to something. I hope he figures out what I'm doing. And 1 brownie for him. If I leave all the brownies out, I'll eat them all. That's not a good idea.